Because we're weaker, we're not doing as much. Because we're not doing as much, we're not as happy. Because we're not as happy, we're not doing as much. And then you get into that cycle of frailty. 50% of strokes, roughly, and 50% of heart attacks are attributable to high blood pressure. So that is blood pressure that we never knew existed or we've not treated properly. While lifestyle intervention does have a role to play, it's never going to be as effective as what a medication can do. So what a statin can do. The interesting part is the data over the last 5 to 10 years, our health spans in the UK have been going down. There's a reason pharmaceutical companies exist, because they've created drugs that work really well.
Welcome to the Visionary podcast, where we discuss science, medicine, physical health, and mental well-being.
Ready, set.
Dr. Benison-Horner, from a traditional doctor, a GP in Tunbridge Medical Group, to a longevity pioneer in your private clinic, Visionary Health. When we hear longevity medicine, I instantly think of billionaires who want to live up to the age of 150 or something. In simple terms, what is longevity medicine?
So I think it's made of two parts. Your lifespan, so how can we extend it? How can we live a longer number of years? And it's made of your health span, which is how do we live longer but well? So can you continue doing the things that you enjoy doing? Think picking up your grandkids, going for walks. When we think about health span, the definition, or my definition, would be the number of the years that you can live disease-free, continuing to do the activities that you enjoy. There's no point in living a longer life if you can't enjoy the time that you've got with it. So and a health span and lifespan are both interchangeable. So once typically you affect one, you're also then affecting the other. So it's not nearly a trade-off when we're talking about longevity medicine anyway.
Yes, you made this distinction, lifespan and health span. So lifespan is simply how many years I'm going to live.
Yeah.
Health span is the years I'm going to spend without chronic diseases, without major medical problems. So what is the gap in the UK between health span and lifespan? Do we have information about this?
So we do. There's generally yearly or bi-yearly data published on this. And so the most recent, which is the ONS, Office of National Statistics Surveys, looked at health span. And the interesting part is the data over the last 5 to 10 years, our health spans in the UK have been going down. So we were having maybe 10 years ago, average health span was around 64 years. That's come down to about 61 and a half years now over the last 10 years. Now, COVID has played probably a factor in some of that, but a bigger part will be due to our lifestyle. And so if you look at men, on average live to 78, 80. Their health span, though, is generally predicted to be about 61 and a half. So there's about a 17-year age gap, or 17 years of poor health that they're having in that instance. And so for women, women live longer. Congratulations, Hala.
Yay!
And women's life expectancy is normally about 82 in the UK. But their health span is, or their predicted number of years that they have poor health is about 20 years. So theirs is even worse.
Well,
so
you guys beat us in this one.
So we do win. So we have, funnily enough, I think we both our health spans drop at the same time, but you just get 2 more years extra of poorer health but longer life. So this is the big stuff that we need to be recognizing at a much earlier age, because we now know that we have some autonomy over what we can do and how we can live a longer and healthier life with it. But it's about, from a population perspective, societal change, if that's where we're going to try and make a difference.
This is quite shocking. I actually asked the question, but I didn't know the answer. In men, 17 years in poorer health at the end of their lives, and women, 20 years. So I will potentially lose 20 years of fun and games and adventures and running after my grandchildren and carrying my groceries, probably in a nursing home or something. This is not good.
So remember, just within that data, that you're seeing that the health span is a survey. So it's a question that they ask you about: are you in good health? Are you in poor health? There's a couple of different ones they ask. So you notice that the curves start to drop with your health span at the age of 61, 62. So it's not to say that you're in a nursing home at 61, Hala, you've got more years than that, but the graph's starting to come down. And the problem with the graph starting to come down generally is that it's an exponential problem, because the more we're not doing, the more we're not moving, which then in itself is a self-fulfilling prophecy about our muscles then get weaker. Because we're weaker, we're not doing as much. Because we're not doing as much, we're not as happy. Because we're not as happy, we're not doing as much. And then you get into that cycle of frailty where you're starting to struggle to do activities of daily living, walking up and down the stairs, getting to the shops, carrying the shopping in from the car. So that's where it's when you start to see these slow, insidious problems happening, it then causes much bigger problems 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line.
Yeah. In your website, Visionary Health, you take this proactive, preventative approach to well-being. Has there been any experience or a certain experience in your 8 years in the NHS trenches that made you stop and think, we need to do something different? There has to be a better way.
My experience over those 8 years is constantly in hospitals seeing, whether it's older people or unfit, overweight individuals coming in with issues that, so strokes and heart attacks, for instance. If I was to talk about the data around some of this stuff, so 50% of strokes roughly and 50% of heart attacks are attributable to high blood pressure. So that is blood pressure that we never knew existed or we've not treated properly. About 30% of strokes and heart attacks are due to high cholesterol. So this is cholesterol that we never knew existed or we haven't treated properly. We could take cardiovascular disease, strokes and heart attacks, as the number one leading cause of death in the Western world. And if we properly treated those two things, we would bring that down to below 10th in the leading cause of mortality. So when I think about patients in my clinic now, I look at them and think if they're in their 40s or 50s and talking about cholesterol, now's the moment, now's our chance. I worry every time we have that conversation about people who have got, say, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, who don't want to engage or say to me, look, I'm going to make some changes in the next 3 to 6 months, let's repeat it. And I think that's a brilliant chance. I worry that my 10-minute intervention means that I don't see them again for 5 years. And that's 5 years of potential damage that's ongoing and potential damage that didn't need to happen.
Yeah, you struck a chord here because I do have high cholesterol level. I'm not sure why.
Genetic, probably.
This is what I'm thinking, because I consume in life vegetables. Yeah. I have a very strict nutrition. Vegetables, lots and lots in a day. It can be more than 10 different vegetables. Protein. I do eat lots of eggs, which is it might be that. And nuts and seeds. This is the only thing I consume in life. But I've been having this for, I think it's 2 years now. And actually, I'm due to have another test. Is there any way we could tame this with lifestyle changes rather than, or instead of the statins? I don't take any medication so far.
What you've got to understand is we are all dealt different cards with our genes. So when we're talking about cholesterol, some people have eat KFC, McDonald's every day, drink lots of alcohol, and will have the most perfect cholesterol.
Oh.
It's sickening.
Really?
But they've got great protected genes for high cholesterol. Some people lead the most perfect diet, lifestyle, vegan, never look at a saturated fat in their life, and they will have high cholesterol. We're all dealt those cards, and we can't change those cards. Now, when we talk about a lifestyle factors that can make a difference, if your diet is high in saturated fat, low in fiber, you don't take any sort of stanol sterols, which are the sort of plant cholesterol drinks that you can buy from Sainsbury's or whatever, you can make quite a big difference. If you're eating lots of KFC and not eating very much fiber, I can bring your cholesterol down quite a lot. 40%, 50% maybe, with some diet intervention, similar to what a statin can do. But a number of people aren't leading terrible lifestyles and have high cholesterol. And so what we need to understand is that those people, while lifestyle intervention does have a role to play, it's never going to be as effective as what a medication can do, so what a statin can do. So generally with a statin, 40 or 50% reduction overnight without you having to do anything. You can continue leading the same lifestyle, enjoy the same things that you enjoy, with typically very minimal side effects. And I think when we think about the benefits of this stuff, I'm never saying that lifestyle shouldn't be alongside medication, but what I am highlighting is that there's only so much you can do with lifestyle, whereas there's a reason pharmaceutical companies exist, because they've created drugs that work really well and have really good impacts. And then when you link this up with longevity, or you link this up with trying to delay chronic disease, this is a really effective primary preventative strategy. So primary prevention, stopping heart attacks and strokes from happening. Secondary prevention is that you've had a problem and we then throw lots of medications at you to try and stop the problem from happening again. And the issue with secondary prevention is once you've had, let's say, a heart attack or stroke, you're, one, much more likely to have another one. Two, there is morbidity, mortality associated with both of those conditions. And so if you've lost half the side of your body with a stroke, you'll take 18 months to 3 years to in rehab trying to get function back. But generally, you'll never achieve the same level of function that you had. And so you're then on a, your hand is physically and metaphorically tied behind your back when you're trying to increase your muscle mass, stay fit, do all those things that we know are going to be important in your later life.
Hi, I'm Hala, your host today. If you're enjoying what you see, please hit that lovely subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me and my team. Or maybe it's more now. We're still learning, we're still finding our feet, but with your support, we can build this channel. Let's take this journey together, one step at a time. Thank you so much for being part of it.
You mentioned genetics. My dad does have a heart condition, but he smokes, he eats palm oil, he eats everything under the sun. So that's how I explain his heart condition. But yeah, probably genetic. You have a very impressive list of qualifications, including a certificate in genomic medicine. So what is genomic medicine?
I would say that it's the revolution in medicine that either is going to, a bit like AI, it's going to promise a complete overhaul of how medicine's practiced, or we will keep promising. And then, so it's either going to change us. My general chat is it's either going to revolutionize medicine in 5 or 500 years. I'm not sure which one. So genomic medicine is basically looking at your genes and understanding what genes might be linked with higher risk of certain conditions. So we've got really good data on some of these things. So, for instance, we've known for a very long time Huntington's. There is one gene that causes the disease Huntington's to happen. Genomic medicine is starting to look at lots of other genes, and so you can have monogenic, one gene, or polygenic, lots of genes, and so we can then start to almost create a profile of an individual, or the hope is we can create a profile of an individual to understand what risk factors you have available with the cards that you've been dealt. And then the belief and where the medicine's moving towards is that there's also then lifestyle interventions that you can make along that side. So, for instance, if you've got a risk of lung disease, we can say, look, if you smoke, your risk is that you will develop a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease or respiratory problems at a much earlier age than everybody else. You haven't got the protective factors associated with it. If we look at people with high cholesterol, and again, we should be linking this with their family history to understand how high the risk is, because you can have high cholesterol and not have any cardiovascular disease in the family. And that's understanding that you've got some genes that might protect you, but some genes that might take away. And you've obviously got more protective genes in that case. And so genomic medicine is looking at your genes, understanding how those genes interact with your environment and what increases or decreases your risk, what medicines might be better for you, and what medicines might not be better for you. So that's
based on your DNA.
Based on your DNA.
Okay, so you pinpoint a potential risk, and even the DNA makeup would tell you which medication might work best.
Yes. So the hope is, so for instance, take like rheumatological conditions, autoimmune conditions. The rheumatologist would generally say, so first-line medication, a third of them work. And then you wait 6 months to find out whether they work. And if they don't work, then we put you on the second-line medication. And we wait another 6 months, and a third of the people who...
Trial and error.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
And then we wait another 6 months, and then we stick you onto the biologics or the third-line medication. And look, that's where that third of patients would work. So genomic medicine, the hope for genomic medicine is that something like autoimmune conditions, we could target the therapy straight away. We don't have to let you go through 12 months, 18 months of trying different medications before identifying which ones you should have been on in the first place. And that saves money, it saves time, it saves quality of life years. People live better in that time. And these things move forward. I mean, cancer, for instance, there's a revolution in cancer that's going on. We know that there are certain types of cancers that respond incredibly well to gene therapy or immunotherapy. And what we need to be doing is understanding where the mutations, where the problems happened within cancer that's led to it becoming a cell that's aggressively invading other areas. And once we know where the problem is, we can then use specific medicines to target that cancer.
Is this in addition to chemotherapy?
Yeah, absolutely. So chemotherapy is effectively kills everything. So it's a bit like napalm almost. You drop a bomb, kills everything around it, including the good and bad. Whereas when you can find or identify specific targets within the cancer cell, it means that you can then have medicines that are looking specifically for where that mutation or that target is, and so only affects the cancer cells. It doesn't affect the healthy tissue around us.
Wow. That's clever. Do you usually do DNA tests for those who see you in your clinic?
So my time within genomic medicine, what I came away from was we are 500 to 500 years away from this being a practice that I would say we should start doing. And I have certain things that you might consider for individuals, but when it talks about genetic testing, I don't think the medicine's not there yet. And so I'm not confident enough to say identifying this gene means we should do something different. Now, I think there are instances. So for instance, the new NICE guidelines recommend genetic testing for people who have had a stroke and whether or not they should be on one of the preventative medications that we start after you've had a stroke. But the impact of this, there's still debate around it. So age plays a role, obesity plays a role, history plays a role, whether you're smoking, cardiovascular disease, all of these things. And so I think we're not clear yet about how important these specific testing genetics are. And so therefore no is the answer for a very long-winded.
You also mentioned cancer here in relation to genetics. I've read that certain cancers, addictions, and heart diseases are usually linked to my DNA genetics. Is it really my DNA or the lifestyle or the habits that I inherit from my parents? Which one weighs more?
There are certain gene mutations that massively increase your risk of developing cancer. So we could say the BRCA1, BRCA2 mutations, increasing risk of breast and ovarian cancer. And again, when we talk about those, that might increase your risk. You might have an 80 or 90% chance of developing those conditions. There's other cancers that are linked with colorectal, so bowel cancers, that have, again, a much higher risk of developing. They're not what's called 100% penetrance. So what that means is penetrance is how many people, if you have the gene, how many people will be affected by it. So I'm going to use the example again, Huntington's. If you have the Huntington's gene, there is 100% penetrance. You will develop Huntington's disease. That's not the same with cancer. And when we talk about lifestyle, there are huge factors that make a difference with lifestyle, we know. So if you look at sort of the number one risk factors, let's say breast cancer, smoking and obesity, the number one and number two. And the third would be alcohol consumption. So lifestyle plays a huge role. There is no doubt the older we get, the higher the risk of developing cancer. And going back to sort of the things that kill us, there are 4 big things that kill us. So cardiovascular disease, strokes and heart attacks, neurodegenerative disease, which is sort of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia type pictures, cancer, and then I would argue sort of stuff like type 2 diabetes, the more metabolic conditions. Of those 4 conditions that kill us, they account for roughly 80% of deaths in the UK.
Yes.
Cancer is probably the one that is the hardest to treat and is almost inevitable. And I mean that because every time our cells divide, they are going through a process of ripping apart. There's a machinery that's happening and there's a risk that damage could occur in that moment. Yes. And as we keep getting older, there's an increasing mutation burden. So that just means there are more little bits of errors that are happening. And probably what's happening over lifetime is that those errors build up to the point where suddenly that leads to a cancer. So I wouldn't say cancer is inevitable, but it's one of the things that we have very few ways of preventing. Full stop. It's more about screening, I would argue, with cancer. We need to detect it early, catch it in its earliest form. And that means that if we take out the cancer in stage 1, where it's just in situ, it's not spread, then you've got a very high chance of cure. The problem with cancer is as soon as it's spread, then the risk of death goes up substantially, and the risk of recurrence.
Yeah, let's try now to find some answers because when it comes to longevity, we all heard it from others and we've seen it in our fathers, grandfathers. By the time I'm 50 or even before 50, it's a slow, steady decline, and like a clock down kind of thing. Now, I'm 47. Tell me this is not true.
It's not. So the aging process is happening to us all. We have autonomy, so we have control over how steep that graph is and where that graph starts. So there is absolutely every year or every decade, for instance, our muscle mass declines by roughly about 8 to 17% a year.
Is this inevitable?
Yes. Your muscle mass is going to go down. It's part of the aging process. It's natural, it's normal. But we have control about how much muscle mass we start with and how much muscle mass we can preserve. So
how do we do that? That's many years.
So training. And I think when we specifically talk about muscle mass, it's making sure that we are focusing on things that we want to be able to continue doing in later life. So what I try and do with people is, first of all, understand what their purpose is. Why are they doing these things? What's their goal? If they want to be able to continue picking up your grandkids, then what we understand from that is upper body and lower body strength is really important. So being able to do a goblet squat, so that's where you hold a weight in front of you and squat down.
Yes.
We need to be able to lift a heavier weight than what a grandkid will be, because we know your muscle mass will keep declining. But if we can ensure that we are already lifting a much heavier weight right now in the age of 47, then you're ahead of where you need to be when that inevitable 8 to 17% decline is happening every decade. But the same is true for other tests like fitness. So we know that the test that we use is the VO2 max test. So the VO2 max test basically is the best data and evidence we have about understanding how fit you are.